I'd like to welcome everybody to the special town council meeting Wednesday, July 12th, 2023, 6 p.m., McKinney Council Chamber. Agenda item number 1, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Agenda item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. It is not on the agenda, but I'd like to call roll call. Daniels.
Present.
Ortiz.
Present.
Adams.
Present.
Montigny.
Present.
Marchetti.
Present.
Shinya.
Present.
Dow.
Present.
Rivas. Absent at this time. I'd like to turn it over to
Lazo, present.
Lazo, present. I figured that out. I'd like to turn at this moment, I'd just like to, first of all, thank Rick White and the search firm and the search committee from the town of Southbridge for their hard, long working hours on trying to locate candidates for the town manager's position in the town of Southbridge. We have 3 fine candidates, and at this point, I just want to turn it over to Dave Adams. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, first I want to say thank you to, on Monday evening, I gave a really quick presentation on some of the things that we went through as a committee to reach to this level here tonight. So again, I want to thank the committee itself for all the hard work and the dedication you did for your town, looking for these 3 great individuals who'll be coming before us this evening. I recognize Councilor Rivas, who is on her way, by the way, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hernandez, Ms. Colonese, and Mr. Canoyer. I really do appreciate all your effort and your volunteerism, as you're vital to, obviously, for this evening. We went through multiple meetings, as I briefed on Monday evening as well, but I wanted to recognize Grew White, who is the firm that we chose through an RFP, and I think they've done the town very well, and I appreciate all the hard work and the candor that I've had with Mr. White himself when things, just with the questions and our good conversations we had and trying to see where the town was heading, and I appreciate asking my recommendations on certain things. Did a great job. The firm did an awesome job because they reached out not only to the town councilors up here, but also the staff of the town hall and other areas, library, police, fire, DPW. They also reached out to leaders and business, leaders of the business community and individuals within the community itself, and presented a fine document to us to understand what the needs and the wants were of the residents of Southbridge. Lastly, at the end, we had 16 individuals that applied here to the town, which is pretty good for these days, what's happening. And we actually interviewed 7 because 1 dropped out. We actually were going to interview 8. 1 dropped out throughout when we started the executive sessions. We interviewed 7 of them, and here tonight we have 3 of them. And that's going to be Mr. Jovan, Mr. Slozek, and Mr. Hierno. And I gave a quick, very quick and brief rundown of their qualifications, and the town council has received all the resumes, the applications, all the good stuff that they need to know to be aware. And tonight we'll just talk for a few seconds with them, or a few minutes with the interviewees. And they also received a packet of background checks and stuff like that. So all is well, and we look forward to we appreciate the residents coming out here tonight to listen in. Mr. Chair, that's all I have at this point in time.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dave Adams, one of the tireless working councilors, one of the busiest ones. He serves on many, many committees, different tasks, and he's a real taskmaster. I'd just like to say thank you from myself and the town council.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 3. Interview and discuss the 3 candidates, John D. Jovan Jr.
You're going to have them talk? Mr. White?
Come on up, Mr. White. I didn't know if you called him up.
No, no, my apologies. Yeah, you can read off. Mr. Chair, if you want to just read that off, it's not until 6:10
Okay.
that we
I
want
don't
to-
like being missed. It's okay, but I'll be brief because I know you have a full night ahead of you. Thank you for this opportunity. to serve the town of Southbridge. It's been my pleasure and my firm's pleasure. My name is Rick White. I'm the principal partner for the consulting firm of Grew White Consulting, LLC. We are a full-service consulting firm specializing in local government recruitment, as well as evaluating a municipality's organizational effectiveness. As a firm, we've been active for more than 20 years. We invest a lot of our consulting effort regarding recruitment on understanding the community we serve and the organization that the recruitment will serve as well. We believe an effective recruit requires more than finding qualified applicants. We go to great lengths to ensure we recommend candidates that fit the community and that are well qualified. This is especially true for a community like Southbridge. As we all know, Southbridge has a proud history that is helping define its future. That pride surfaces in everything that happens here and all that you do. And your next manager must embrace and embody Southbridge's values. And I believe all of the three candidates recommended by the screening committee do that. I want to thank the Southbridge Town Manager Screening Committee led by Councillor Adams, with strong support from Councillor Rivas and all the committee members who worked tirelessly on your behalf. I've been working in the public sector for over 45 years and find it difficult to think of a harder working, more diligent volunteer group, more committed than your search committee. They took their responsibilities seriously and purposefully, providing you with three very qualified candidates, each different, with different stories, but all capable of successfully serving you in Southbridge. The town manager opportunity appeared in the Massachusetts Municipal Association, the International City Managers Association, Mass Hire, and Indeed websites, as well as the local paper on May 8th. Invitations and recruitment brochures were sent out to approximately 400 applicants that same day. Reminders of the invitation were sent out on May 22nd. Additionally, I personally reached out to about 40 prospective applicants that either I or members of the community believe were good potential candidates for Southbridge. In the end, 8 candidates were recommended to the screening committee to be interviewed. All were believed to be capable professionals and able to serve as Southbridge's next town manager. All 8 candidates were screened and interviewed by me personally prior being referred to the screening committee. The screening committee, after careful review, deliberation, and debate, identified 7 candidates worthy of an interview. The interview pool was diverse in all aspects. That diversity helped the screening committee to come to a better understanding of what skills and qualities Southbridge next town manager should possess. Again, I want to thank the town council and the screening committee for this opportunity. It's rare that I am able to use my humor and have it appreciated. It doesn't happen at home, but it happened at the screening committee members, and I'm especially appreciative of that. But I want to thank them very much for their efforts. I have no doubt that any one of the 3 recommended finalists will be able to serve you and Southbridge community very well. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I think you're ready to move on.
Have any questions? Councilor Marquetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. When you started this process, I'm going to presume that you read the town charter
I did.
Deciding on hiring a town manager.
Yes, I did.
And the charter says, well, in your posting, you preferred a master's degree in public or business administration. In the charter, it says a bachelor's degree from an accredited 4-year degree granting institution and shall include professional experience of at least 3 years, full-time, compensated supervisory service in municipal administration.
Yes.
Including in that is 4-1-3 in the town charter. To be considered for appointment, such experience shall be certified to the council by an appropriate official of the entity where such experience was obtained. Now, in my packet, I have yet to receive any of that.
All degrees and experience were certified and attested to in the background and references that were provided to you.
Again, to be considered for appointment, such experience shall be certified to the council to be by an appropriate official of the entity where such experience was obtained. I am on the town council. Everyone up here is on the town council. I have never received that certification.
Again, my apologies if I miscommunicated that, but it was included in the reference and background checks in terms of certification of their qualifications, experience, and background.
Well, it's always been my feeling that we need to trust but verify. And without this certification, in my opinion, this is a violation of the charter.
Again,
And
I believe it's certified.
I would come to the conclusion that we need to postpone this tonight until these documents are provided to this council.
Again, if you carefully look at the background and qualifications report that I provided for the council on the 3 finalists, you'll see a verification of those qualifications.
No, those are references and backgrounds. That's
Yes.
not a certification that, by an appropriate council, that they did what they said they did in their resume. I could provide you with a resume and tell you I was president of the World Bank. That doesn't make it so. You need to certify these things.
I did.
And you need to provide it to us.
And I
You
did.
did not. I've never received anything like that from you.
It's in the material I sent you.
No,
But
it's
thank you.
not.
Mr.
Councilor
Chair.
Adams?
Thank you. I'm going to ask the counselor then, what verification, what specifically are you looking for? Please describe the entirety of the
I am
verification
reading to you what it
process.
says in the charter.
And I'm reading to you,
Such experience shall be certified
have the
to
floor.
the council.
I still have the floor.
Well, you asked me a question.
Well, you can answer it when I'm done. Anyways, also, the education verification, that was one of the reports that we received in here that the firm actually investigated. It says it right there. Even though I'm not supposed to share everything in here, searches, credit, driving record, education verification, other research, social security, reference checks, and all that stuff is on there. I'm going to ask you, what specifically are you looking for a verification? What type of document? Is there some type of document or form that you're looking for?
I'm reading to you what it says in the charter. Shall be certified to the council by an appropriate official of the entity where such experience was obtained. In other words, in my opinion, they need to provide us with information from the place that they worked at, their starting date, their ending date, their job duties, what exactly did they do that gave them the municipal experience. And I'm sure there's more to it than that, but as far as I'm concerned, all I received is background and reference results. Charter's not asking for background and reference results. I'm sure that's a plus. That's not what it's asking for.
Okay, if I may take a moment and maybe a point of clarification. When we appointed Councilor Adams as the chairman, Rivas as the member, I always considered them as our information bank as far as gathering the more technical parts of the search, so some of the technical parts probably wouldn't go public. And maybe I misunderstood, but when we ran a search for Florence Chandler, when we came up with Florence Chandler, we had the same type of representation, but the structure was different. There were more councils on there, and that's why I think that charter reflects maybe another era. But going forward, the way the charter is structured on how a search committee is formulated, the reason why there are 2 councilors on there, they are the ones that are supposedly representing us on that committee. So my question, I understand what's written here. My question is, to Adams and Rivas, do you feel during your search, did you sort of feel comfortable with the certification and it was proven to you that all things were in line?
To answer you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay. Then moving forward, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
We're going to do our job now. All right, we're moving on to Agenda 3, interview and discuss the 3 candidates, John D. Jovan Jr., Mike Slozak, and Tom Guarino, as put forth by the Town Manager Search Committee, possibly vote on a new town manager tonight. The reason that's worded like that is because we are going to ask the questions, get the answers, and if the council feels comfortable to pick tonight, we will choose tonight. I probably will call for a 15-minute recess if councilors would like to talk to each other, maybe deliberate, and then discuss what you saw or whatever. If you feel that there is another meeting in line, we will make a motion to have another meeting to actually vote on it. And we will not wait like, like weeks. We need it right away. So, but I'm leaving it open to the council's decision whether you want to vote tonight or not. If the question and answer period has fulfilled your likings, we will take care of it tonight. So with no further delay, we're going to John D. Jovan Jr. Jack, if you could take that, see?
Good evening, Council. Do you mind if I take this off?
Go ahead.
Still have not gotten the answer.
It's not working tonight.
If you would introduce yourself and
All right.
short statement.
So, good evening, Council. My name is John D. Jovan Jr. The majority of you all know me as Jack Jovan. I am a lifelong resident of Southbridge. Grew up in Southbridge, attended Southbridge Public Schools, graduated from Southbridge High School. My children have grown up in Southbridge, graduated from Southbridge High School. My parents grew up in Southbridge. My grandparents one set came from Albania, the other set came from Canada. My father served on the Southbridge Town Council, and I have had great-grandparents that have served on boards going back to the early 1900s. So Southbridge is my town. I am here as a candidate for the town manager's position. If you want me to go in a little background of what led me to apply for the town manager's job, it is something that I had considered for a number of years, possibly looking at as a later in life career choice after serving many years in a variety of roles in town government. My management experience goes back to early days of high school, college, as a store manager at McDonald's, owning a family business, and then going into a municipal environment where I served as a police chief for 11 years in 2 separate communities. Those positions were part-time. Well, we called it part-time, but they were essentially full-time because you were on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You were always the chief on duty, and you had the responsibility of the towns. I then transitioned and went into the insurance field as an investigator, where I've served for the last 20-plus years. And during that period of time, served on a variety of boards here in Southbridge, going back from school committee to various different subcommittees on town council, chair of the fire station building committee, and also had the pleasure of serving on the town council. So that is where I'm at in my background. I'm very happy and grateful that the search committee, as I've heard earlier, the kudos to the search committee of their diligent work knowing how searches go, participating in those. I thank the search committee for looking at my experience and pushing me forward through this. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and I hope you find my qualifications to meet the needs of the town of Southbridge. So,
We're going to start the questions, and I'd try to advise the councilors to be fair to the candidates, if you could use the same questions that you're answering, unless you have something that somebody else said you might want to add to. But I'd like to stick to the questions that you asked each and every candidate so you can compare their answers. I'd like to start out with Councilor Rivas.
Because I was on the search committee, you can certainly start with other counselors.
I was just going to go around the horn.
Okay, okay. All right. So here we go. All right, so there have been quite a few resignations in the town hall since the election. I've heard from staff who have resigned and from staff who remain that they are fearful and concerned about how the town hall will operate when a new town manager comes in. Some have expressed a concern that things will go back to going to a good old boys network. How would you allay the fears of staff? And the second part to that question, how would you increase morale?
Councilor Rivas, thank you for that question. Living here in town and being part of different committees, I'm well aware of the number of resignations that have recently taken place. Those resignations concern me, and they concern me as to why individuals that we have, the talented people that we have, are leaving the town of Southbridge. A lot of it could be perception of what they think might happen as opposed to what the reality actually is. I think the biggest thing is the void in leadership at the town manager's office. The interim town manager has done a fabulous job, but on a part-time basis, it's difficult to be here in the town hall to see on a day-to-day basis. So there's so much flux and change as far as the leadership goes that I think certain individuals are concerned about what the implications of this change is going to be. Having served on town council, having served with many of the members up here on town council, I certainly understand that there's different thoughts and beliefs, and I think as a town manager coming in, the first thing would be to bring the town hall together to say, hey, look, there's new leadership in the building itself, and as a town manager, right out of the charter, town manager is directly responsible and accountable to the town council for the effective administration of all town affairs placed in his or her charge by the council or this charter. That means the town manager is responsible for the day-to-day activities, and it's incumbent on whoever the new town manager is to forge that relationship with the council that says, this is a partnership. I'm in charge of the day-to-day activities. You flow down to the town manager what your expectations are, and then to build the capacity in the town hall. And to lay those fears is that fact is that you have to assert yourself as, I am the leader here in the town hall. I will work with council to make sure that the day-to-day things are done, and your responsibility is to do your job for the citizens of Southbridge, and I will be the one that's accountable to the council. And that's really what it comes down to, is a sense of leadership, and also knowing that they have somebody that they can go to with concerns, and that those concerns will be heard, and the ability to work with council to develop an atmosphere that we're all working as a team. And I mean, the issues, we have a lot of issues, but it's going to have to be the ability to build capacity and leadership in the town.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to Councilor Dow.
I don't have a question at that time. Thank you.
Councilor Shinya.
Thank you, Jack, for applying and trying to be part of this community. And I also want to thank the citizen members of the committee that worked so hard during the course of these last few months to bring candidates before the town. My original question, Councilor Rivas has kind of took from it. So I'll go to my next one, is describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision that was unpopular but necessary for the town's best interests, putting aside employees' feelings and council's concerns.
I think over the course of my tenure in government, there's many decisions that you make, whether it was as a school committee chairman, working with superintendents that you may have had to make a change of, or even the town manager that we had here formerly. Those are difficult decisions or conversations that you have to have. Whatever decision a town manager or a leader makes, It has to be in the best interest of the town and the citizens. And sometimes you may go against your colleagues either on a council or on a school committee because there's certain things that they may want to see done immediately, and you have to weigh what those decisions are going to have as an impact to the rest of the town and the community. So I've always tried to make the decision about if we're going to make this decision, and it might not be popular, but how is that going to affect everything else in the organization? If we're going to make a change, say in the inspections department, or that was made in town, it was unpopular with certain individuals, but was a decision that was necessary. But we also had to think about what that effect is going to have on the operation itself. But you also have to be able to articulate why you're making that decision and why it's in the best interest of the town or the town hall. So that would be my approach on that. And I just want to get back, if I could, to the good old boy thing. I hate that term because throughout your career, you will have the opportunity to build relationships with individuals in your community or departments that you're able then to use to better the organization or the town. Mm-hmm. You just have to know how to balance those and make sure it's not done for purely personal gain. Okay.
Councilor Marquetti?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I was going over your background for this position. You have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And we know that the job posting was preferably a master's degree in public administration, business administration. The Home Rule Charter basically says at least a bachelor's degree and 3 years full-time supervisory service in municipal administration. So how do you feel a bachelor's degree in psychology is applicable to the job requirement of municipal administration?
A degree is a piece of paper, and while the business administration is the certain degree, I did take business administration courses as part of that degree requirement. When I was pursuing to finally get my bachelor's degree, I took many courses at Nichols in financial accounting, business accounting, and things like that, but I ultimately ended up getting my final degree out of Assumption College. Those courses were taken while I was an employee at Commerce. They had allowed us to take courses, so I took courses at Nichols College in business. But then you also have to look at a body of work over 30 plus years in different municipal experiences about building budgets when I worked at a school system that we had to manage our budget within the school department that I was at, and accountability for that. As a school committee member, if you want to learn how to be a municipal official or a public official, start on a school committee because you're very detailed in the budget and the formation of budgets and accountability. So you have to look at not only the piece of paper, but also the years of experience in different facets that you did and participated in.
So as far as your experience goes, and I went through the list of the different jobs that you have performed over the years, but some of these, well, the insurance adjuster, reserve police, chief of police, part-time, volunteer firefighter, I'm not sure that those are applicable to this type of municipal administration. And then your position on the school committee, town council, things like that, that's legislative, not municipal, not administrative, I mean. So can you explain why you think these are applicable to this position?
Well, as I explained, I was a municipal police chief for 11 years. It was termed part-time pay, but essentially you were the police chief even though you got part-time pay. So you were responsible for a department, you were responsible for the workings with other municipality government, and I was very involved with my Board of Selectmen to learn how to budgets work, how to develop budgets, how to manage budgets. So that, again, that's all 30 years of experience in different capacities to have municipal experience. So I think if you added up the number of part-time positions and everything, you would have the equivalent of 3 years full-time.
And so when you were on the town council, did you listen and relate well with the other councilors?
I would say I did. I believe I did. I mean, to be elected chairman your first year on council, I think is something to be proud of, that on an election, on your first time around, that you were able to bring 8 people to the table to vote you as chairman. And I do believe that we had a lot of challenges during that period of time, which we still do, that we were able to, I mean, right off the bat, we had issues with curbside collection. We had issues with receivership in schools. So all those things, as chairman of the council, I think we've had a good relationship with council. Now, did we always agree? I'm sure you and I could attest to the fact that we don't always agree. But I will tell one thing, I've always respected the other side's opinion. I may not agree with your position, but I respect the person behind that. And that's what's important in town government. That's what's important in a manager-town council relationship. So we're not always going to agree, but whatever decisions we have to do is to work together for the best decisions for the people of the town.
And you know the limitations of the position as town manager, correct? I mean, just looking at the charter and all the, you serve at the pleasure of the council. You do have some limitations as the town manager.
Absolutely. I mean, and you have to understand that as you have to look at, the charter is something we live by in this community. I think that we can all agree that individuals that come here for this position or any position in this town government don't understand the charter and have not, and what some of those limitations are. But the goal of council, as council chair, I think, and town manager is how do you work within that framework to make sure you accomplish the goals of the community. For instance, if things have to go to the council for pre-approval, which we all know it does, how do we best plan that? When I first got on council, there was a lot of discussion in the town manager's office that limitations were put on the town manager and town government because of the charter. And my goal as chairman at that time was to say, okay, if this is what the charter says, let's plan accordingly and backward plan. So if we go out to bid for something, or we have a project, backward plan it so that we know when bids are coming in, we know when they're going to be opened, so that communication between town manager's office and council should be taking place so that they know to have a meeting scheduled so that there's no delays. It shouldn't take more than 2 weeks to get things through as long as you understand that's the type of government we have. No, people don't like sometimes how the transfers go, but that's the way the charter's set up. And we have to work within that and work together.
I just have one last question. Do you consider yourself an independent thinker? You're not swayed by department heads, other people on the staff, other management positions?
I think people that know me well enough know that I'm an independent thinker.
All right.
I mean, I'm going to take a lot of input from what colleagues on town council would say or what town officers say, and that's important that you take all those thoughts into your decision making. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be a rubber stamp for anybody. I won't be a rubber stamp for council, and I won't be a rubber stamp for individuals in the town department head. Whatever decision we're going to make, we're going to work together to make sure it's the right decision moving forward.
All right, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Council Montague?
Thank you very much. Mr. Jovan, it's great to see you here. I think that your experience is unique, especially because you have so much knowledge about the charter, as you said. My questions, you've answered some of the pieces to it. I appreciate your answer in the beginning to Councilor Rivas about being a team to get this all done. I think you would be a great asset to it, but I'm going to ask a question maybe that Councilor Marquet just asked, but like in a little more of a positive way. How do you see yourself transitioning if fortunate enough to be selected? How do you see yourself transitioning from the role that you've taken here as counselor and council chairman, school committee member, school committee chairman? You've worked very closely with superintendents and town managers in the past. I know you said that the town manager works for council, but what do you think directly are you ready to do to positively be, we're all unpaid volunteers and you would be the manager of the town. Can you speak to that and just the positive transition from one sector to the next?
Yeah. Well, with all due respect, I didn't take his comment as being negative. It's
Oh, no,
a very
maybe you did.
important conversation to have. I've thought long and hard about what that transition would be from a counselor type mindset to a town manager's mindset. And that's something you have to be cognizant of, because while you're colleagues, now that relationship is different. So it really is in developing conversations with every counselor to say, what are your thoughts? How do you want to see things proceed? And how can we work together to move the agenda forward? And it will take a lot, if I'm so fortunate to be selected, to check myself that I make sure that I keep the town manager hat on and not that counselor type conversation. But you also have to remember you have that background as a council about how things operate and how the charter operates and how town government operates. So it is a challenge, but I think it's one that working together, we could overcome.
Yeah, to quickly follow up on that, having that background can be a valuable asset, but I know if I was in your shoes, I would be sitting sometimes watching a vote go down and say, I might not be on the same side of this, but the council voted this way, we got to do it. But I think there's a fine way to bring everybody together while doing that, and you sound like you're ready to find that smooth transition if selected.
So as a follow-up to that, when you say that the council wants to move in a different direction, I would hope that working together, you're not going to have that many times that you're going to be working opposite than what the council wants. The goal would be to say, council, what do you want or how do you want to get there? And work together on a plan to accomplish that. And I'll be the first to admit that probably in my career as a school committee member and a counselor, we probably didn't think out things long enough to think about how that was going to be impacted. So you learn by different events that happened in your career, and you don't want to repeat them. So I think you don't want to have that relationship that we're on the opposite side. Okay. You also have to have the ability to go, there's always a couple sides and different things that go out on council or school committees that you have different perceptions. I think the goal would be to make sure that you work on both sides of the aisles on different items to say, how do we compromise to bring that together so that all the council is happy with how you're going to move it together. Because there are going to be disagreements with councilors about how to accomplish a certain item, but what's best for the organization, what's best for the community, and how can we compromise to make sure that we get the best decision moving forward.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Mr. Jovan, thank you for applying, and I'm happy to see you up here, just like the other two individuals that'll be coming after your time here on the hot seat, literally the hot seat. I don't think this has been asked yet, and this will be asked to every single member that comes up here. Schools. So recently, just today, Boston, the mayor over there, is very, very worried that the schools are going to be taken over by Desi and Bessie and all the big wigs that are over there. And I think Mayor Wu was pretty upset about some responses from Commissioner Riley. And I don't think that's any different than what we've experienced here in the town of Southbridge, Holyoke, and another one. And I know we've done a lot of things. The town council's put a lot of pressure on the state, not so much the receiver, because it's the state's responsibility ultimately now, while we pay for some of the funds. How do you, as a town manager, differentiate between dealing with the receiver, who is nothing but hired on to fix the school system, and the state itself, Commissioner Riley and his individuals? Though the town of Southbridge, I think the town council last year did a really good job finally getting them back to the table. So how do you differentiate when you're talking to them? There's going to be needs not only from the state, the town council, but the receiver as well. How do you work that in? I mean, it's a big thing it's a big thing in this town, obviously. It affects everybody.
It is. I think we've always had this conversation about, okay, you put us in receivership, but what's your blueprint to get out? And I saw the post earlier today about Boston Public Schools, and okay, you put yourself in receivership, but what is the blueprint to put in? And you're absolutely right. I do think, though, that the town manager has to have a relationship with the receiver to try to make sure that that receiver is working with the duly elected school committee, regardless of whether they have authority or not, to make sure that the receiver is doing the things within the law that he's supposed to do with the elected representatives of the school committee. And to start building some capacity and not just be absent at meetings with no dialogue. So I think the town manager plays a role in that to say on no different than on the monthly basis that I would meet with him as to how are we going to work as a community together to develop those plans. We've given you the resources that you want, that you've needed, that you've asked for. How are you implementing those? On top of that, I think the town manager has to perhaps engage with the cities of Holyoke and Lawrence to have conversations about, we're all in the same umbrella. How can we work as three distinct communities together to bring the commissioner to the table to say, how are you getting us out? You know, you have Lawrence that's 12 plus years out. Holyoke is a year ahead of us. We're in year 7. What are you doing to get out? So it's a complicated formula, but I think one, I certainly understand the council's mission on this. And I think we have to have develop some kind of plan as to how we work together and what you see, the council sees the town manager's role in that development as well. Hopefully I answered some of your questions. I'm not trying to skirt. You know that receivership in schools are big on my agenda. You know, I'm no bigger advocate of those. So,
Mr. Chair, can I continue? Just a follow-up question. No, I understand. It's a very complicated situation. It's almost like a day-by-day, minute-by-minute changes. I understand that. But one of my biggest things that I've been trying to push at the very beginning of last year, and even I've made many comments about this, and you know, I want to support the school board as much as I can. How do you get them, even if they don't have supposedly the power, but they do have the influence, how do you get them to come here at a meeting, not spend 5 or 6 minutes, but start helping them educate themselves? Is it through the receivership, DESE? Is it your own basic knowledge that you've had in the past? What is that? How do you do that?
I mean, I've already communicated to the Commissioner of Education previously that it's not the receiver's job to build the capacity of the school committee. It's the Commissioner's office job to start building the capacity and providing them the tools to say, how are you going to be a functioning school committee? If I were appointed as a town manager, given the background I have both on school committee and the schools, you know, I would offer my leadership to the school committee in whatever capacity that I could to say, hey, this is how we can, and start giving them some guidelines as to budgets and formulas like that. But I think the town manager's office too, what I've seen over the last 5+ years is the town manager's office has kind of taken a hands-off approach to the receiver. They've had conversations, but it hasn't really been a big, like, hey, tell us what you're doing and how you're going to get there. They account for the largest portion of our budget. We spend $30 million a year with state money and town money on education in the town of Southbridge. That's well above any other town. We spend a lot of money. What are we getting for the money? And it's important as counselors and town managers to say, we're part of that. Yes, you're alone and you have the responsibilities of the schools, but it's town money, and we're responsible for that money as well. So there has to be a closer relationship between the town manager's office and the receiver to say, one, this is a partnership. You're not at it alone, and how are we going to work together to make sure that we can come out of receivership? And what does that take with the commissioner? And it's just going to take a lot more dialogue and leadership to say to the commissioner's office that we're here, and we have to keep that pressure up. And I'm not sure what the next step is, but it's something that I'm very knowledgeable on, the receivership and the thoughts on it, and working together to get out of receivership.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilor Ortiz?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councilor Daniels?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one second. I'm just taking a note here. Thank you. I apologize for the delay. Welcome, Jack. It's good to see you up here. Having served Southbridge with 3 different town managers on a close basis, I've discovered a common issue that either befuddled or vexed all of them. Further, during personal discussion, I heard all 3 managers exclaim that there is a lot going on in town, as I'm sure you're well aware of. I'm sure you've done your diligence in terms of what's happening throughout the town. So I would ask, would you describe your management style relative to handling numerous issues coming before you at one time? What would be your priorities?
There's a lot of issues in town, and you're right, and I share your sentiment about the common theme was always there's so much work to do, it's too much work sometimes, and it's true. My management style is I think everybody knows that knows me, is a collaborative type of approach where you want to get as much input from different individuals as you possibly can to make the decision that needs to be done. So it's a collaborative work environment. But also as a manager, I believe that you have to be visible throughout the town offices, town government, different departments to make sure that people know who you are and that you get out of the office and touch base with employees throughout the whole town so that if there's issues, you're able to keep your ear to the ground to try to head them off before they even occur. The priority is, there's a tremendous void now going on in town hall with different department heads. It's going to be recruiting individuals to come and work for the town and then to build the capacity and create an environment that's welcoming to them, that there's not this environment of not knowing what's going on. And I think that's where a lot that you hear right now is the uncertainty. The uncertainty of how long is this individual going to stay here? Are they going to be supportive? Are they going to be supported? And I think as a manager, I would want to instill with them that this is not a stepping stone. This is where I want to be. It's not looking for the next job the minute you get here. It's growing up here, you have a love of the community, and you want to see it succeed, and you want to instill that in the entire town, government, officers, so that they share the same pride to work here. But the priorities would be to build capacity within the town hall and throughout the organization, because there's voids everywhere. And we're not the only town that's having this issue as far as openings in positions, because there's so many town government openings ongoing. But you want to make them know that this is a place that they will feel proud to work for and supported. And that's the type of leader I like to be, is that I'm supportive. And I also like building the team approach, whereas you develop those individuals in your organization to move forward so that you have succession plans and you don't have the voids that you have. So give them the tools, the support, the training, however best we can, to make sure that we have a well-functioning environment, but a supportive environment and a collaborative environment. And one that they feel that they are supported and that there's a leader at the top.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, you've given me a sense of what your
The leadership
priorities
side,
are.
but how to get things accomplished.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's developing the to-do list that I still have from my council days, believe it or not, that, hey, these are the list of things that need to be accomplished, and keep them updated, and how developing plans and diaries to make sure that you accomplish those tasks, but also having a conversation with the council to say, okay, there's 9 different councilors that all have their individual thoughts of what needs to be done in town and how quickly it needs to be done. But we have to work together as a group to say, let's identify some key items that we want to accomplish, while also understanding that there's voids in the town hall that you have to build capacity to be able to do that. So we sit here, and I know certain councils, we said, we want to fix sidewalks. And at one time it was, well, do you know how much money we have available to fix sidewalks? We don't have the capacity. So we have to evaluate where we're at as an organization and list out immediate priorities and some short-term goals and long-term goals, and clean up some of the things that have been lingering. But it's really developing how we're going to get there and working together, and the expectations of council to say, hey, we have to work together and be realistic in the timelines that we think we're going to accomplish things. Because there's no secret that we'll all sit here and say, we want to fix roads. I don't think there's anybody in this town or anywhere in this Commonwealth that sits there and goes, I want my roads fixed. We all know we want our roads fixed. How are we going to get it done? How are we going to find the funding for it? How are we going to have the capacity to do it? So that's, again, the team approach, working together and being realistic.
Mr. Jovan, I'm going to just kind of overview on a quick couple questions. You're a man that's been a firefighter, a man that's been a police officer, a chief, served on a school committee, ran negotiations, which you don't do as a counselor. You were chair, chairman of the council, various projects we can go over. Nobody served with you longer than I have. And I've had my differences. And we've both disagreed passionately, but never did it ever become personal. And that's one of your strong points. Looking at what we have to deal with in the town of Southbridge, I look at it as we have solutions. All towns have issues, we have solutions. And I'm a big fan of the team concept. I came out of the sports world. I have a big family. We work together, we get it done. We have a problem right now where the downstairs hates the upstairs, and it has nothing to do with council. We have an HR department that I think we need to redesign. We also have an issue of a councilor can't go into the town manager's office. We have an atmosphere in that office right now, and I think we have a fantastic acting manager, and he's under a lot of pressure with all the actions that have been taking place. You get appointed town manager opening day. What is your plan to put that front office back the way it was, or back to some sort of order?
The town manager's office is responsible for a lot of duties and responsibilities, not only to the town manager and also to the town council. I think day one, it has to have a conversation with the council. How do you want that office to operate? What do you see the role of those individuals in that office? Number one. Number two is to have a conversation with all departments to say, what is going on in this town hall that you feel are either obstruction to the way we operate, or obstruction to our citizens, or the perceptions of what's going on? Now, my understanding is a lot of positions that people have resigned from, so to talk about how to revamp human resources, the job is posted for a new director of human resources. It's going to be the new town manager's job to come in and say, what do you see that position being in human resources, and how are they going to operate within the town itself, right? We had conversations back when that position was created as whether it was assistant town manager / human resources. We were supportive, and I would hope the council would be supportive of any reorganization plans that any town manager would put in place. However, let's go back to that conversation that I had earlier. You make a decision, what are the effects of that decision? And perhaps we didn't think about what the effects of that title would have been on town government. Because we called it an assistant town manager, yet our charter didn't have anything spelled out about an assistant town manager or the roles of the assistant town manager. So that conversation, we'll have to have a conversation about how do we want to, human resources is vitally important to any community right now. This town size, $70 million budget with hundreds of employees, you need human resources to make sure that you're following the guidelines of the law. But let's have a conversation about what we envision that person's responsibilities are going to be and how they interact with the town council. And ultimately, again, it goes back to the town manager being directly responsible. So there were some things that took place there that maybe shouldn't have, but we have to put that in the past and say, how are we going to build that department up to operate for the best interests of the community? As far as, and I think you have to look at the whole office structure and say, how is that going to work? How do we want it to work? And what decisions do we have to make sure it works
The
properly?
reason why I bring it up is that the town manager is the only one that can reconfigure a department and bring it to the council.
Correct.
So that is going to be one of the big duties of yours, because I think this council feels like we should freeze all hiring until the next manager gets on. That's the vibration I'm getting from the council, because they want you to make that decision, or the other gentleman that gets appointed, whatever happens tonight, because we want to give the next gentleman the tools. If we're going to hold you accountable, because we don't deal with department heads, we want to give you the tools to do the job, because we're going to call you on it. And I think that's the way the charter is structured. And I think going forward, I got one quick question. You and I served on a building committee. You're on another building committee now. Your building committee experience is paramount, along with, if you took your experiences in a municipality, they would give you a doctorate degree in this area. I'm not a big fan of go get the doctor. We had Dr. Heising, who destroyed our school system in 1 year. So looking at my experience over the years, sometimes you got to look right in your backyard for the answer. Florence Chandler was one of those people that was in the backyard and answered the search and got the job. I think moving forward, we're going to deal with the other two gentlemen and yourself, and I'd like to wish you good luck, and I thank you very much for coming in and for qualifying for this position.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the council for the opportunity to interview for this position. Again, I thought long and hard about whether I would apply for the town manager's position. A lot of people asked, why did I come off council to apply for this position? When I decided not to run for council again, it was for purely personal reasons and family member that had been ill. And I had thought that the former town manager was going to be here for a number of years and hoped he would be as serving chair on the appointment of that town manager. But circumstances changed. So part of it, when you talk about experience and the ability to do the job, I really searched out counsel from a lot of different individuals in the town of Southbridge and colleagues that I've known about whether or not I had the certain skill sets or background to apply for this position and be successful of it. And I'd like to thank Mr. White for having a candid conversation with me about what a town manager is and about whether I have the qualifications for this position. Because certainly it is going to be a conversation piece, and I'm no fool to know that it's not going to be. I believe that my experience, my knowledge of the town, the budget, the individuals, the personalities, and the challengers, that's why I put my name forward for this position. At the end of the day, I want the council to make sure that whatever decision they make is for the best of Southbridge. At the end of the day, what's best for the town of Southbridge? Hopefully my qualifications have matched those other individuals. If not, that's okay, because it's what's best for the town of Southbridge. So thank you all for the time.
We still have 20 minutes, so I'm going to, Councilor
I
Dow.
thought they were done at 7.
Thank you, Chair, through you.
Okay, sorry. I thought the next interview was at
No.
7:10, so.
At 7:20 he comes on.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Small question. What will you do to provide safety for the employee on a daily basis and keep the town function normal on a business hours daily? Again, what Councilor Lazo, Chair Lazo say at the beginning. Safety for the employee and keep the town function normally for other employee, town councilors, business people to be able to do their job daily correctly, and as well the employee to be safe.
Safety is a big concern of any town. Certainly my tenure as police chief, we had safety concerns about our town hall. I think that's a conversation that I would have with the police chief to do an evaluation of the town hall, to say he's the expert, he's the safety expert, chief, come in and do a safety look through. Are there certain changes that we need to make in the town hall to make sure that all employees feel that they're safe? At the end of the day, we are a public service industry, so we have to make sure that employees, counselors, anybody that needs to come in to conduct business are able to do that. So I think I would do a safety study of the officers, say, are there certain changes that we need to make, and then bring that to the council if it was funding purposes or whatever, to say that this is in the best interest of the town and all employees. And there is a concern because there's groups that go around towns too that do these safety, First Amendment audits that just walk throughout towns, government halls and stuff. So I think it's something that we have to take a look at, but I would work with the police chief, fire chief to make sure that whatever safety needs to be upgraded and bring it forward to the council.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by the councils?
Mr. Chairman,
We have time?
since we
Councilor
have time,
Senior.
since we have time and Mr. Jovan's not sweating yet, a little bit off of Councilor Rivas's comments and the Chairman Lazo talked about some of the discord that goes on here within Town Hall, within the employees. During my 50 years of being involved, working for the community and being part of the government and being involved in committees, I have always heard the blame of a department head leaving or a particular employee leaving, always blaming the actions of council. And I never looked at that as them leaving because of the actions of council. I've looked at it as they can't handle the stress and demands that this community puts on them when they're hired. We are a poor to moderate income community that strives to give all the residents a good quality of life here at as minimum cost as possible. So over the course of these recent departures, how would you handle conflicts between different departments within the town government or within the town council with these employees?
Well, again, the charter is very specific that the town manager is responsible for the overall operations of the government. So there has to be that conversation with the council that if you have an issue with one of the employees, you need to come to the town manager. Town manager then needs to have it directly with that employee and then try to resolve that. And likewise, you have to have the ability to have an open door policy that if an employee feels that they do have an issue with the council or the actions of the council, you're able to come in and talk to the town manager and say, okay, what are you feeling and how is that coming across? And then the town manager has to have the ability and the guts, I guess, to be able to go to the council chairman and say, hey, I have an issue with a counselor, I need to, and can we bring in the counselor and have that conversation, because a lot of it is perception versus reality. Perception is the council micromanages the town manager or department heads. If that is ongoing, tell me how you as a department person believes they're micromanaging your department. Now, they may feel that they're micromanaging the town manager, but that's an issue between the town manager and the council. Doesn't affect them. So you have to be that buffer between those departments and the employees with the town council. And again, it goes to that communication, to have the honest communication with counselors that says, what are your expectations and how do you want things done? But that flow has to go council, town manager, employees, employees, town manager, council. Now, there's nothing wrong with councilors having conversations. It's right in the charter, right? You can have conversations with employees, but when it comes to the day-to-day operation, it really should come through town council. You have an issue, you come to the town manager. A citizen, you have an issue with an employee, you come to the town council if you want, or come to the town manager's office, not directly between a citizen and a town employee. I've seen that too many often. That flow has to come back about who's in charge, how that flow of information is going to go, and how we're going to resolve those issues. And hopefully, by developing that kind of relationship and expectation, you head off those issues and you now have a functioning government that is not that hard and not that difficult to accomplish.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If no further questions, Jack, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take 5 minutes. I'd like to call the back into session. Be seated. Thank you. At this time, we're going to be interviewing Mike Slozak. Hope I pronounced that right.
That's fine.
Mike, if you have an opening statement to the council, and then we'll go into questions.
It's nice to meet all of you. My name is Michael Slozak. I'm an experienced town manager. I'm a graduate of the University of Massachusetts with an MBA in finance and Boston University School of Law. I'm a member of the Massachusetts Bar, and I've served as a manager and administrator at more than several Massachusetts municipalities.
Thank you. At this time, we'll start from the other end of the dais. Mr. Daniels.
Thank you.
And,
It's beautiful.
We're all ready to go. Okay, I'll ask you the same question I asked the previous candidate. Having served Southbridge with 3 different town managers on a close basis, I discerned a common issue that either befuddled or vexed all of them. Further, during personal discussion, I heard all 3 managers exclaim that there is a lot going on in town. So, would you describe your management style relative to handling numerous issues coming before you at one time, and what would your priorities be?
The way I've always found the best way to handle a busy office with a lot of issues, I try and follow the rule, just touch a piece of paper once. In other words, when it comes across your desk, make a decision and put it in the app box and you're done with it. If you keep letting things pile up, reviewing things and not getting things done, pretty soon it becomes unmanageable. So that is my strategy, that you just keep things moving and try and touch it once, solve the problem, and go on to the next problem. As for priorities, I think your biggest priority right now is getting your school back in your hands.
Okay. May I follow up with a different question?
Sure.
Okay, and a little off to the right. Is there some area of your personal inventory of job performance that you feel you need to improve?
I've worked on it. I'm an impatient person. That is, I think, my biggest personality flaw. I am very impatient, and I like to get things done. I have trouble with going through meeting after meeting and not getting things resolved. When I know the answer, I want to jump on it and just make it happen. So that's one thing I've worked on, that you really, I get frustrated when there are meetings. I found this recently when I was serving on the Ludlow Senior Center Building Committee. We knew where we were going to build it, and we should have taken a vote, but we went through another 3 months of meetings before we made the decision. There was only one site that fulfilled all of our qualifications, but I got very frustrated in those meetings that we just kept rehashing the same thing. I don't have the patience for that. I like to get things done.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ortiz?
If you're hired, do you plan to relocate?
I don't. I don't live far from here. I own a home in Ludlow. It's about 45 minutes of driving by the back roads, so I did not plan on relocating.
Okay.
Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Welcome back.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you. I was going to ask you, could you move your mic just a little bit closer to you?
I can do that.
I'm deaf, and there's a doorknob on the right side of the brain. So, my question to you tonight is our school system. So recently there was an article about Boston Public Schools, actually today, with Mayor Wu and Commissioner Riley kind of going head to head, and DESE looking at taking over the public schools, and they have a plan of it, obviously a plan that they want the Boston schools to go by. We also have 3 other towns within the Commonwealth, ours included, that are under receivership. Now, recently, the town council has taken a harder step towards dealing with the state, vice the receiver himself, because he is appointed by the commissioner. And so we want to, is it my mic? Okay. My apologies. But we all, we're dealing with the receiver, we're dealing with the state itself to get them back to the table, in which we've been successful this past year, and hopefully we can move forward. But we also have, dealing with the town council and its needs and its wants for the town itself. How do you, as a town manager, look at trying to deal with 3 different entities that I think we're all on the same page of getting it completed, but how do you deal with that because we're so far apart on what we really want, all 3 of us? How do you do
I
that?
think I'm a pretty experienced negotiator, and I think I can help mediate that between all of those entities. I'm pretty familiar with school operations. I believe I mentioned to you in the screening committee that I am licensed. It's an initial license, but I am licensed as a school business administrator. I think I can effectively work with DESE and negotiate. That said, I've read all of the transition plans from the three different school districts, and I don't think they have a lot of good ideas or novel ideas. They all seem to read the same. Each of these communities have different issues that they need to address, but the receivership receivership documents seem to read as the same thing. They're almost interchangeable. So I don't know that they're offering a lot of value to your district. It seems to be sort of a one-size-fits-all solution, whereas you know your schools, you know what the issues are, and they should be back in your hands.
Thank you. Can I just follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
We have a school board that doesn't have any power per se, but they do have influence. I've been trying to work, and I know the council's been working with them, trying to help them out to get what we can to help them get educated themselves for one day when they do take over or take it back from we were able to take it back from the schools. Our previous town managers really, they dealt with the receiver a lot, but the thing is, we want the school board to be proficient in what they're doing when it's time to take over. They shouldn't be lost when they're trying to transition. How do you, as a manager, kind of take reins of that or try to help the school board? We have school board meetings, and if the receiver doesn't show up, the school board meetings are 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. So how do you work with the school board themselves, besides the other 3 entities?
I mean, there are methods to educate the school boards. I mean, there are resources out there. There are associations. They should be part of it. They should be attending some of the associations of school boards and talking to other school board members from other communities that actually have been empowered, so they know what the issues they're going to face are when they get into the position where they can actually control the schools as they should. So there are certainly resources out there. There's mentorships. Basically, if you've got people that don't have the knowledge, you need to have them mentored by people that do. And these regional associations and state associations have those sort of people.
Thank you for your answer.
Councilor Montigny?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And thank you for being here. My question is related to, you're currently the business operations manager for Public Works.
I am not currently. My position ended with the beginning of the new fiscal year. That's why I am job hunting. The town of Enfield, Connecticut, obviously Enfield, Massachusetts is under the Quabbin, but Enfield, Connecticut had a huge budget hole, $10 million. I don't want to discuss the reasons, but there were layoffs and there were an almost complete cut in our capital plan. And the capital plan was a big part of my job, so I was made somewhat redundant.
Thank you. No, I see that you have a lot of experience as town manager and town administrator, 5 different places in 8 to 10 years, but then switching over to operations manager, and now you'd like to get back into being a town manager.
And I can address why I did that at the time. At the time, I was, the last position I was in Sterling. Are you familiar? It's familiar. It's a little bit north of Worcester.
Yep.
Very nice, very affluent little town. But the requirements there were that I pretty much attend every meeting every night. Frequently, I would be at town hall and on the top floor, and there would be 3 meetings at once, and I was expected to be at all 3 at once. I'd be in one meeting, and I'd get a knock on the door. They need you in conservation, can you come in? And I'm there for 10, 15 minutes, and I get a knock on the door. The finance committee wants to talk to you. And that was fine. But at that time in my life, I had some personal issues going on with my daughter. She was in high school and having some issues, and my grandmother was terminally ill. Both of those have resolved. My daughter's now a college graduate and has a job as a data analyst, and unfortunately my grandmother has passed. So those issues are no longer relevant to my life, and I have the ability to have a different work-life balance than I had then. So I want to get back into it. I enjoyed it very much. Frankly, the job I had in Enfield was not stimulating, let me put it that way. And I really enjoy being a town manager because there's so much good that can be done. I particularly liked working in Athol. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a very poor town. And I think I got a lot done for economic development there. And I really want to get back into that and do that kind of service again.
And if I could just follow up, Athol and Uxbridge, you were actual town manager as opposed to town administrator. Was that for council form of governments or selectmen? Or?
It was selectmen town meeting.
Okay.
The town meetings were fun there because I had to talk on every single article.
Yeah.
And I miss that too. I do like town meeting. I know you don't have it here, but I always enjoyed town meeting. I'm the moderator in my own town.
I saw that. That's great. Yeah. Okay.
I know I would have to resign because it's an elected position, and I've read the charter, and you can't. Your town manager can't hold any elective office, and I assume that's other towns included.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Marquetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Mr. Slozak, happy to see you tonight. Just looking at your background, very impressive background, law degree, Boston University, Master of Business Administration and Finance. I take it you're well-versed in municipal law.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And
Your
municipal law,
experience-
procurement, all of that.
Pardon?
Municipal law, procurement, all of that.
Okay. Your experience as business and operation manager, Public Works, town administrator, town manager, municipal hearing officer, private law practice, adjunct professor. You have a very competent background and experience. And some of the highlights that I saw that you also put in there is that you are an expertise in public procurement, human resource management, and dedicated to the success of economic development of a community. So Southbridge has a problem with economic development here as well. We've been trying for the last, I would say, 10 to 20 years, trying to change our economic development here, to bring in new businesses with good paying jobs. We've tried different approaches, grants, studies, all kinds of things, but we still have empty storefronts downtown. So what would you do, what have you done in the past to improve economic development in the communities that you were in?
Well, having been through Southbridge and having worked in Athol, you look like you have a lot of business comparatively. Downtown Athol used to be very vibrant, and now there's a lot of empty storefronts, and the stores that are open are generally secondhand stores and social service agencies. There aren't a lot of vibrant businesses there. So that was my challenge up there. One issue we had was that Athol General Hospital was having difficulty attracting doctors because there was no shopping or anything. There was not a lot of amenities up there. So one thing we did is we worked with Market Basket to bring in Market Basket. And I don't know if you've been on Route 2, Athol now has a nice plaza with a Market Basket in, movie theater, because there's not a lot to do up there. Just a lot of new things in there. And the way we got that in, Market Basket came and said, look, we are interested in being there. It's kind of a regional hub, but the site we want has no public water. And can you bring water in there? And we looked into it, and it was going to be $3 million, $3 million that Athol did not have. We tried to get grants from the state, but they were not available. So what we did, I made the suggestion, why don't we create a business improvement district? A business improvement district, you define an area, and you borrow to improve the district. We borrowed $3 million to run the water in so it could be improved, and you dedicate the marginal tax revenues to paying off those bonds. And the water came in, and 10 years later, the bonds are paid off. And the town is now reaping the increased tax revenue from that area. Plus the increased amenities. There's some nice sit-down restaurants there. There's a Wendy's. There's some fast food restaurants there. Just a lot of new things. Now, I won't say it's a 100% success. If you go by there, some of the buildings are still not fully built out. They're basically shells, and we've had some tough economic times. There was a recession, then we had COVID, so things didn't go as quickly, but they are developing and they're getting better. It certainly is something that we didn't have before in Athol. The rest, the downtown, I managed to bring in some business there. Vacant building right next to Town Hall, which really bothered me to have that vacant building right next to Town Hall, but it's now a dental clinic. We got them to come in. We've got some eye doctors that came in. I mean, real professional development, and that's something that wasn't there before, and I'm very proud of getting those things in.
So I'll just ask you a couple more questions.
Sure.
I asked the other applicants, do you listen and relate well with council members or selectmen? Do you relate well
I
with
don't know that I don't have any problem relating with either. I think it's the same kind of people run for it, the same kind of publicly motivated people are the same. If you were in a town with selectmen, you'd probably be running for the Board of Selectmen. So they're very similar people, and I relate well to all of them. I think we kind of have a common esprit de corps because we're all in town government. We're all focused on making our communities better. I certainly, I've run for public office and been elected to public office just as you have. It's the same kind of motivation, and it's council members, boards of selectmen, they're the same kind of people. They want to make their communities better, so I don't think there's a real difference.
And I take it, have you read the charter and you know the limitations of the town manager?
I've read the charter this afternoon,
Okay,
so I know exactly what the town manager does.
all right. You serve at the pleasure of the council. Council is basically
Absolutely.
the boss of the town manager. All right, thank you. And my last question, are you an independent thinker, not easily swayed by department heads or other management, people in management positions in town?
I'm an independent thinker, but I am open to suggestions and I'm open to input. I'm not someone who is certainly going to go over everyone's head and just say, you do it my way or the highway. I like to work with my department heads, especially the ones with specialized knowledge. I mean, I've never been a police officer, and I never will be. I've never been a firefighter, and I never will be. I know that when they come to me and say, look, we need, we need new cruisers for this reason, or we need an accountability system for the fire department, that, I'm going to take that very seriously and try and fund it if I can.
All right, thank you. I'm all set.
Councilor Senior.
Applying and coming to our community. For me, my first question would be, describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision that was unpopular but necessary for the town's best interest and not for the interest of employees nor the interest of town council.
I had to make an unpopular decision almost immediately when I went into Athol. They had an infestation of I don't remember what particular mosquito-borne disease it was, and I shut down the nature conservation area because I didn't want people getting that. That was extremely unpopular, but it was something I felt I had to do. I haven't had too many instances where there's been a lot of public backlash with decisions I've made, but when I do it for the good of the people and the good of either the health or the safety or the economic welfare of the people. And I understand that generally as a manager I'm privy to more information, and I make the decisions. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to make them unilaterally. I'm going to bring those decisions to the council. In the particular case in Athol, I felt it was something I couldn't wait till the next meeting, but I put it on the agenda and I discussed what I had done with the Board of Selectmen and why I had done it. And I expected them to either overrule me or endorse my decision, which they did. But certainly I don't make unilateral decisions. I serve at the pleasure of the council, and whenever possible, I will bring controversial things to you for your review. You are the policy-making board, and you make the policy, I implement the policy.
If I may continue. In our community over the course of many years, we have seen department heads and employees leave employment from the community. And a lot of these talkings within the town, they blame council as one of the reasons that they leave employment here in Southbridge. So how would you handle conflicts between departments within town government?
I think I'm very much invested in the chain of command. You are the leaders of the town, the policymakers. You should be implementing that policy through me. You talk to me, I talk to the department heads, and there should be a chain of command. And I think it is troublesome when individual counselors are going to department heads, sometimes with conflicting requests and requirements. That can be very difficult for department heads, and as a manager, I like to shield them from that. Come to me, talk to me, and I will talk to the departments. And I will be talking to the departments on a very regular basis. I think for the major departments, I want weekly one-on-one with the department head so I know exactly what's going on. Not to interfere, but to be knowledgeable and actually get to know the people, get to know the departments. Again, it's a matter of chain of command and implementing the policies of the council. Incidentally, if I may interject something that's related but not exactly the same, I talked about this to the selection committee. If you're having a lot of turnover, I think it's very important to have written policies, written procedure manuals, so that when there is turnover, the new person can come in and there is something in writing, there are policies in place, there are procedures in place, so the next person that comes into the job has got a guidebook to work with.
Mr. Chairman, if I can continue on a question, I don't want to deviate from my questions, but Councilor Ortiz asked the question to the gentleman about moving to town, and you said no, you wouldn't move to town.
I'm not that far away. It's a big move. My family's established. My wife has a job.
If I can just continue, I understand moving is difficult for families, and you are a short distance from town. But what concerned me was one of the answers you gave when you left employment from one town. It was the fact that you had multiple meetings and you were always not home. And in Southbridge here, with our form of government, we have subcommittees and we have council meetings. And we have all those other boards too. How would you handle yourself with the multiple meetings that you may be required to attend during your course of employment?
I will be there. As I said, at the particular point in my life, there were some personal issues that I had to deal with that made it untenable. Those are all in the past. I have every ability to make evening meetings. I volunteer in my own town quite a bit, and I'm out in the evening for that. So it's not a real issue anymore. I will be here when I need to be here.
Okay.
And I think if you look at any other town that I've worked in, that wasn't a problem. Uxbridge is famous for having long selectmen's meetings. I think the latest we got out was 2:30 in the morning. And I drove home to Ludlow, which is significantly farther than here, and I was back there at 7:30 in the morning. No, I'm absolutely willing to put the time in because I know how much time is required.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Dow?
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you for applying in town of Southbridge. If you become a town manager, what you will do, because as you see, a lot of vacancy open, it's going to be a lot of new employee. What you will do when you hire all these employees at the beginning to be able to serve the residents the service they need?
I will certainly look for the strongest candidates, but also I think it's important that you hire internally from the town, town residents as much as possible, because this is something that helps builds families, it builds economic wealth within the town, and certainly this is a diverse community, and I would want a workforce that looks like the community. I think that's important too. I'm a white male, older, and I know that that's not reflective of the community, but that doesn't reflect my values. So I'll be looking for the strongest candidates, but also people that can relate to the community. I had this problem in Athol. Athol has become a rather diverse community, and the town hall that I walked into was 100% not just white, but old townspeople that really were not open to the changing population that was there. And I had some incidents between residents and town staff because of that. I want to make sure that doesn't happen here. I had to mediate things that I really shouldn't have had to mediate. So I will be looking for the best people, but also the best people for Southbridge.
Can I continue?
Continue.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I'm sure you heard for what is going on here in the town of Southbridge. We have the main office, the town manager office, where every businessman and residents come to do business, and that door is locked. What you will do when you become town manager, you will keep that main door, the brain of the town of Southbridge, where all the residents and all the businessmen have to knock on the door and wait 5 minutes to be open. What you will do if you become town manager?
Well, there's always a balance, but I've always tried to maintain an open door policy. Sometimes it's impossible, and if you're in the middle of budget negotiations and budget discussions, you can't always see someone immediately. But in general, I've had an open door policy. I think anybody who comes to see the town manager should see the town manager. And if they're angry, that's something you have to do. I can recall one time we had an unfortunate issue with some flooding in Ludlow, and a new homeowner, someone who had just bought their house, they had an illegal drain in their backyard with no backflow. And they had a walkout basement. The storm sewer backed into their backyard and into their cellar and just destroyed everything. The woman came in and wanted to see me, and I saw her. And I said, I'm sorry, this was due to an illegal drain. The town isn't responsible. I'll submit an insurance claim, but I don't think it'll be honored. And she cried, she yelled for at least a half an hour. And I just sat there and just tried to be reassuring to her, and that's all I could do. But that's something I can do, and I will do. If people have complaints, I'm going to hear them.
Thank you. Thank you.
And by the way, no locked doors.
Thank you.
Councilor Rivas?
Oh, welcome back. My question relates to resignations. There have been quite a few resignations since the town election. Staff have expressed fear and concerns about the town hall operating as a good old boys network. How would you allay the fears of the staff, and also how would you help morale?
Well, I'm not a town native, so I guess I can't really be a good old boy. But I think there's got to be an open dialogue. I certainly want to have regular meetings with the department heads, but also with the town staff. And as I said, there'll be an open door to my office. I want the town staff to know that I will support them, that I will be open to them. I'm open to suggestions. I won't always agree, but I will listen to everyone, and I will do what I can to make this into a team, a town hall where everyone can rely on everyone else and we all work together. That's why we have meetings. That's why there's open dialogue, and I'll do everything I can to foster an esprit de corps and encourage good morale for all of the town's members. I'm not the kind of guy that goes around yelling and screaming at staff. I like to be there to support my staff. I think that's one of the most important parts of being a manager, is to be supportive, to help people have the not just the physical means to do their job, but also the emotional and moral support to do their jobs. Frankly, a town hall where people are resigning because they're unhappy or in fear is not a place anybody wants to work. It's not a place I want to work.
Through you, Chair, just to follow up, you've been a town manager in a few different locations. And so related to that question, what has been, your retention of staff? How long did staff work for you? What was like the turnover rate? Any data that you can share with us?
Honestly, the biggest issue I had with retention in the places I worked was retirement, which is not something you can really do about. I've had staff retire. Occasionally I've had staff people leave for other communities for whatever reason, but they were few and far between. I had an assistant town clerk, I think it was in Uxbridge, leave to be the town clerk in another community, and you can't fault them for doing that. It's a promotion I couldn't offer, because you can't have more than one town clerk. things like that. But I've had very few resignations.
Thank you.
Couple of quick questions. Mike, I'm of a belief that town employees should treat the public like customers in business. When you have an irate employee that is rude to the public or mishandles the public, how do you deal with that?
Well, first off, you've got to counsel them. You've got to you sit down and talk to them first and say, you understand this is not an acceptable way to act. I can't say I've had a lot of problems with that, but I've had them before. And it's never gotten to the point of terminating the employee, but if it becomes persistent, at some point you do have to sit down with the union and the employee and explain. And if it becomes a consistent problem, there are progressive discipline procedures in any union contract, and that is a disciplinary issue to be abusive to the public. And if it has to go through that, it'll go through that. And eventually, if it persists long enough, it can result in termination, because you are correct. The public they're not just our customers, they're our employers. Their taxes pay our salaries, and you can't disrespect those people any more than you would disrespect your boss, any more than I would disrespect a member of the council. You can't do that. They ultimately, if there's a and I've seen your org charts, but above everything are the people. They're your bosses. They would be my boss. They're the people that we have to ultimately answer to.
We have a kind of a divide in the town hall where the first floor and the second floor do not integrate well. I mean, they have a strained relationship, to say the least. If you're the town manager, I know we had the previous town manager, he wasn't very good at it, but going forward, being the optimist, looking forward to you, what would you do to handle that problem?
First thing I would do is find out what the source of this is. That's not a problem I've ever had before. That one floor is hostile to the other. There must be some reason for it, and I would try and find out what that reason is. I would sit down, and of course, as I said, regular meetings. I'll determine, when I get here, how often is required for full departmental manager meetings. It may be weekly, it may be 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how productive the meetings are. But that would certainly be a topic to be discussed. What is going on here, and what are we going to do about it? Again, we're a team. We are here. We are here to serve the public, and we can't do it effectively if every office is just an isolated little kingdom. And honestly, I haven't seen that in town hall, but early in my career, I worked for Data General. In fact, before I went to law school. And that company no longer exists because there was a lot of territoriality. Very strange processes. The sales department didn't get along with finance, and they had to, anything that went, if I recall, anything from sales had to go through human resources to finance. And it goes back to the early days of the company when the sales manager and the finance director disliked each other, and the human resource manager mediated. So all of this animosity that went back to the beginning of the company was still among whole large departments years and years later. So you have to root out the original problem. Why is there this divide? And then you find a solution to it. Honestly,
Have you ever been in a situation where you had to do a removal?
Where I had to do what?
Have you ever been in a situation where you had to do a removal of an employee?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A number of times. Every single time was different, for different reasons. One, the hardest was a police sergeant that I had to, eventually I got her to retire early and supported the retirement. But I've had to fire police officers for misconduct. I've had to fire a DPW worker at once for drugs on the job. Every time was a different thing, and it's never easy because you're taking someone's livelihood away.
Thank you. We have extra time. Any councilors have any other questions at this time? Council Daniels.
The council's been very good about asking you questions about specifics. I'm kind of interested in the broader overall view. So, first, would you describe your due diligence or process in preparing for the interview this evening?
With what?
Would you please describe your due diligence or process in preparing for the interview this evening?
For the interview this evening? Oh, that's interesting. Yes, I read everything I could on the town. I read the charter. I looked at your budget, your budget document and read through the whole thing. I looked on the Telegram to see if I could find any stories. You don't get a lot of press, apparently, but I read what was there. Same thing when I was in Uxbridge. They just never seemed to send reporters down this far south. But yeah, I looked at pretty much anything I could find. Anything on your website. I looked at your department structure. I looked at a lot of your, I looked at your recent meetings where there were minutes to see what you're talking about here. I looked at the agendas and meeting minutes for a lot of your committees to see what they're doing. I just tried to get as much information as I could. I read all of the anything that was available online about the town. I pretty much looked for anything I could find.
Okay. Therefore, then, how would you take the job, you're in the job a month, 2 months. Can you give me some sense, and this is overly broad again, I apologize for that. Can you give me some sense as to what a day in the life of the town manager would be if you were the town manager?
Yes, I would come into the office. I would first I'd find out if anything happened during the evening. I'd ask, because people live in town, and I'd say, anything happened that I should know about. And from there, I'd review any correspondence that I have. I would have meetings scheduled, at least one a day, with major department heads, of one-on-one. That would probably take place in the late morning or the afternoon. And it's hard to say what would actually happen because you have things planned, but it is to some extent a reactive job. If things happen and you have to deal with them as they come in. So I can't exactly say what I would be doing. I'd be reviewing all of the emails I've got and trying to resolve anything that came in, but I'd also be looking at planning things. I'd have something planned for the morning, but that may not always happen because things happen. Certainly a month in, I still would be reviewing what's going on in town and planning and finding out things that need to be done. For example, as I said earlier, I want to make sure everybody's got written procedures. All the policies are in place that need to be. If they're not, I'm going to be working on either drafting them or having them drafted. Let me put it this way. I believe in bureaucratic management. People say it's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. It means everybody gets treated the same. You've got policies and procedures in place. Things work like clockwork. Everything can go almost on autopilot if you've got all of the policies and procedures in place. So within the first month, I'm going to be working on making sure that those policies and procedures are in place. But at the same time, that's a long-range thing or a medium-range thing. I'm going to be reacting to everything that's happening. I'm probably going to be starting the budget process. I know it's early, but you start it. Traditionally, I start my budgets process almost immediately after the new fiscal year starts. You can't start early enough. So I'd be working on all of those things simultaneously.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a quick question, an offshoot. I know we've been talking about morale, budget, town halls, departments, what you're going to be when you land. The piece that seems to be missing in the discussion is community involvement. That's why there's always a question, are you going to move to the town of Southbridge and become part of our fabric? And that's always been something in the back of our mind, that moving to Southbridge. The debate goes on and on about whether the manager should live here or not live here, or it's an option. But moving forward, if you're going to stay in Ludlow and you manage the town of Southbridge, what is going to be your community involvement? How do I look at what you're going to be doing outside of the town hall with the community itself?
I will be here all the time. I mean, and my family's going to be here frequently. I've already looked into to see that you have a Y available because I want someplace to work out. So I'll be going there either at lunch or after work. I've been looking at places to spend my time and take my family to dinner and everything I can do to be involved in the town, aside from laying my hat on a pillow here. It's a nice community. And you know, Athol, I was there all the time. We would spend at least one weekend day there. I was there in the evening a lot. Even though there was not a lot to do there as far as eating out or anything, well, there is now, fortunately, but, you know, I tried to be as involved as possible because I love the town and I love the people, so I wanted to be there. I still go up there as any time I can because I kind of fell in love with the town. I certainly will be committed to this town if I'm the manager. You have to be. You can't do the job if you aren't.
Councilor Montague?
Thank you very much. Kind of an open-ended question since we have some time here. Assuming that you have some sort of general analysis in your head of what you think about Southbridge, you know, do you like Southbridge? And, you know, there's no real direction I'm looking for you to go when I say that, but you know, some people want to move out of Southbridge. I'd like to see citizens moving into Southbridge, not talking about your situation, but maybe you answer it based on the school district, since it's our #1 problem that we kind of need the help of a large team with. Just your general thoughts about Southbridge and what you see in its potential.
Southbridge is the kind of town I grew up with and the kind of town I've always been most comfortable working in. As I said, my last town was Sterling, which very nice people there, but just it's a wealthy little town with not a lot of real problems, and I just didn't relate to it well. I grew up in an old mill town. Ludlow's an old mill town. You're the eye of the Commonwealth because you made glasses. Ludlow was a jute town. That's what we did. Back in the last century. We had the largest jute mill in the world, which is now there's nothing there. They're redeveloping it for various things, but we're certainly not producing any jute. But I love working in old blue-collar mill towns because that's the kind of town I relate to. That's why I liked Athol. That's why I liked Uxbridge. And that's the kind of town I want to be in. That's one of the main reasons I applied here. I want to be in a town like this. It's the kind of people that I relate to. I grew up working in the trades. My family had a hardwood flooring business, and You know, I put myself, from the time I was 8 years old, I would help my father, all the way through the time I finished law school. I put myself through business school and law school, banging nails, putting hardwood floors in. And those are the kind of people I relate to. People in towns like this work hard, and I respect that. And I want to, when they come in and, you know, they say I pay taxes, I say, I know you do, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by any councilors? If not, I thank you very much for your time tonight. We will be
Thank you.
working forward. We still have another interview, and
If you have a second, may I ask a couple of questions?
absolutely.
What are the big issues on, aside from the schools, do you have any major building projects?
We are right now in the middle of the bidding of the fire station, brand-new fire station. We are also amidst of a tremendous amount of road and sidewalk work. I think the town might have neglected for a few years, and now in the past 5 years, we've been moving hard with that. We've had councils got elected on roads and sidewalks because citizens immediately know when they're driving on the road in their neighborhood what the problem is. Other than that, if any other councilors would like to add anything to that, but we just built a middle high school not too long ago. We did some renovations. We're circling around for another batch of repairs on some of the older buildings. The town hall needs work. We have a tremendous economic development person with the grants, Peg Dean. She's everywhere all the time, and I think, you know, with that you'll enjoy her if you get the job, because she is like high-powered, and a lot of the monies that she has, renovations to Henry Street Field, a lot of the dog kennel project going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in Southbridge, all good. I think that a lot of the foundation work has been laid out in the last 5 years, and I think moving forward we're going to build on everything that has been laid out. This council is excited, maybe sometimes too excited. They're in a hurry to get to work, and the problem is we don't have a town manager. And I think once the town manager is appointed, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of work getting done in the town of Southbridge with the new manager.
Let me tell you one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just not to interrupt you. We also have the rail trail that's coming online. The design right now, all the way from Dudley, all the way through Sturbridge. We have affordable housing. The chair, I believe, mentioned, well, we do have like Wells School that has turned into a senior private affordable housing, and we also have some coming online over at the American Optical, and we have the Massachusetts Police Academy, Central Massachusetts Police Academy, coming in here to the Old AO area. So there's a lot of stuff going on to the town.
I will tell you I have quite a bit of experience with public buildings. I've been involved in projects for the new high school in Uxbridge, the new elementary school in Athol, the redevelopment of the library in Athol. Pretty much we tore off the entire addition to the 1910 Carnegie Library. We left the Carnegie Library there and then built a very large addition in back of it, just pretty much using the Carnegie Library as a facade. Other projects, I've been involved in building 2 senior centers, so I do have a lot of experience. And also as far as building roads and sidewalks, you know, I've been in public works for the past several years. I've been involved in road work and sidewalk work at a really retail level.
Councilor Marchetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. As I said, we have a lot of road, sidewalk problems in town that we're trying to resolve. We also have, this building here is in pretty rough shape. We're going to have to do something about it. We can't keep putting it off forever. We have a lot of older buildings in town. A lot of them need work. We have a hard time, we're going to have a hard time finding the funding for it, but it's something that I think is going to have to be done. I think we're going to also have to take a look at our wastewater treatment plant. I know that there are some problems down there right now. It seems to be not being taken a good look at this point, but it's something that I think we need to get ahead of. I've seen and I've heard some problems down there at this moment. Another thing I'd like to let you know that we have one of the best water supplies in the area, and we have a lot of towns that are asking us that we are supplying water for, and so that's a positive for Southbridge, and I think you should know about that and keep that in mind, that we have a water supply we got one of the best water around. So just thought I'd let you know that. Thank you.
That is good to know.
We also have curbside as well. Big curbside issue. So that's coming up this year.
You mean trash pickup?
Town, yeah.
Yes. I dealt with that in Enfield, particularly the cost of pickup has gone through the roof. By the way, as far as your wastewater treatment plant, while I was in Enfield, we did a $32 million upgrade on our wastewater treatment plant, so I'm very familiar with the process.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have an airport also. It's rare for communities having, we have a town airport up at the, we have a diner there. It's kind of a nice getaway place, but that's another, there's a lot of assets in the town of Southbridge. And I think managed properly, we've got a great future ahead.
I agree.
Councilor Shan?
Things that they're talking about, that we have our town moving forward. The big negative about the whole thing is how we're going to pay for it. So if you become our manager, it's going to be a big process for you to figure out how we're going to pay for it and keep our taxes with acceptable level for the community.
Well, the best way to do it is economic development and not put the burden on the private homeowner. So I would certainly focus on economic development to increase your tax base without putting that on the heads of the private individuals. I will say one thing. I've never in my entire career suggested an override vote. And in fact, I may be the only town manager or administrator that suggested an underride vote to my Board of Selectmen. I was told no. But basically, we had a large surplus and I didn't want it wasted. And ultimately it was, but
You're hired.
so it goes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the interviews of Southbridge Town Manager. At this time, we are going to be interviewing Thomas M. Garino. Tom, if you could give us an opening statement to the Town Council.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank the council for having me this evening, and I thank the search committee for putting my name forward. I'm thrilled to be back here tonight. Brief background. I am a Western Mass native. I grew up in Greenfield. I was a circuit rider, one of the first circuit riders for small communities up around the Quabbin and into Northfield. From there, I went to Warren for a few years. Still has some great ties in Warren. One of the select board members and I still remain good friends today. Went to Vermont to do and learn some economic development work, what I thought was going to be for 1 year. Some of you have heard this. And as it turned out, I ended up meeting my wife-to-be there and have been struggling to get out of southern Vermont for quite a long time. Did a consulting gig and then went to work for the Mass Rural Development Council. And don't let the word rural fool you. We did a lot of federal, state, agency work that would be very, very germane to a town the size of Sturbridge, be it back then it was broadband hookup, it was equity and education. Rural areas had issues. Some of the larger communities had issues too. That ended when the funding ran out from the federal side, and I found myself with 4 young children and needing a job, and there was an interim town manager job open in Bourne. My wife, as I told the search committee, my wife informed me that I would apply for that job. which I did, and a 90-day hitch turned into about a 14-and-a-half-year ride. Most of it was really good. The last 18 months or so were tough. I left Bourne on good terms. We agreed on a departure. I stayed in while they did the transition and still have a great relationship with them. From that, COVID hit. I wasn't a real fan of driving all over the place. My wife wasn't a fan of that either. I was able to pick up a position in Greenfield at the Housing Authority, more for doing systems work, personnel policies, new job descriptions, wage and classification, explaining to them how civil service, because Housing Authority employees with more than 4 years become civil service employees. And have been doing pretty well. We're building some new things there, but pretty much my job there has been systems. And that brings me to here. My bosses are aware that I'm applying. They knew that if I found a municipality that I was interested in, I would be applying. I was deeply disappointed last time and really did want to come back and try again for Southbridge.
Okay, we'll start from left to right. Council Rivas?
Thank you.
There have been quite a few resignations since the town election. Staff have expressed fear and concerns about the town hall operating as a good old boys network. How would you allay the fears of the current staff, and how would you help morale?
So those things happen. Elections happen, fears happen, be they justified or not. And I think one of the things that we would do is, I think if everyone sticks to the charter, specifically as it relates to the manager and the department, sections 4.2 through 4.6, that would go a long way in alleviating some of the department leaders' concerns. I think you need to meet with the the department heads' concerns. I think you need to meet with the department heads. You need to find out what their fears are, take them as legitimate, because they wouldn't be bringing them up if it wasn't something they were concerned about. Communicate that with the council. I think the council has to be as integral a part of this team building and trust building and all of the things that we need to do to be able to go forward. And respond to the department leaders that you've got their back, that you're going to be working as a team. It's my job to help them do the best job they can. And I want to bring the resources, not necessarily financial resources, but certainly some professional development and other resources, be it peer resources or things to bear. And if it becomes really, really difficult, I think that there needs to be a full sit-down between the council and the department leaders to air out what the concerns are and map a path forward. As far as the many resignations that you've had, we went through I think I talked about this last time too, we went through a retirement tsunami in Bourne, where I lost probably 9 or 10 of my department heads in a matter of 18 months. They were of age. It was a retirement time, and lost the finance director and the treasurer almost the same day. Not for any particular bad reason. They came in together. They said they were going out together, and they did. So I've been aware of bringing in new people, getting them up to speed quickly, making sure they have the tools. If you're bringing in someone in accounting who's not done municipal accounting and fund accounting, there's a very different way of looking at things. I may bring DOR out to do some tutorials. We may bring DOR out to come in and do a financial review, although your finances are in a lot better shape today than they were the last time I was here. Your free cash is almost where it should be, at least as of '23. Your stabilization account is very healthy. And you should be proud of that. You're up almost to 8%, at least as of '23. Those things are really important. Those help. The more financially solid you get, the better the bonders look at it, the better interest rate you have, the better chance you have to get an upgrade. When I came to Bourne, we were a AA-. When I left Bourne, we were a AA+. I would hope to be able to do similar things here.
So as a follow-up, you talked about getting the council involved in team building. What are some of your strategies to do that?
So there are a number of different facilitative models that you can use for that type. There is a strategic type plan model that you can use. There's an old system that's been used. They don't use it much anymore. It's called 6 Thinking Hats. That's one that can be used. There can be, I think the idea is that the council would take the lead in address the department heads and the town manager. This is what we expect. This is how I think we can get there. Let's work together and build a plan. Let's get some policies in place. Let's get some priorities in place. We all work toward the priorities together. And one of the other things I think is important to build trust back and forth is the council puts out something, or I bring something to the council and they adopt it and say, go ahead with it. We want to bring that policy direction all the way down, and I don't mean down towards people, but throughout the organization, so everybody's aware, from the administrative support staff person who's working in the assessor's office to the police chief and the fire chief and your DPW director and your health director and all of them and your different boards. We want to be sure that we get some quick wins, and if we can get some quick wins that start to build momentum and start to build confidence, you can then move on to bigger things and bigger things and bigger things.
I have one more follow-up. You talked a little bit about this when you were talking about losing staff to retirement. Can you give us other examples of how you retain staff?
Sure.
Thank you.
We instituted, there were certainly some things within the bargaining contracts that we needed to take a look at that were, most of the time, we tried to make them revenue neutral. We started an employees appreciation fund. It took a lot of years. It wasn't a lot of money. It was $2,000 or $3,000. And we were able to do a couple of things for the employees during the course of the year. We did shout outs occasionally, I don't want to say frequently, to those folks that had accomplished something. Either they passed a course or they created a new spreadsheet that helps things work better. We want to make sure that those folks are recognized for that. And you bring that up not only to themselves in department leader meetings, but you bring it up to the council as well, so the council and the folks that are the taxpayers in town and the business people in town know that their folks are working hard.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Dow?
Thank you, Chair, through you. What you will do, because you're going to have a lot of new employees coming in, and there was hired, 1 year, not long time ago. At the beginning, when you take your term as a town manager, to make sure those employees know and serve the public the respect and what the public deserve.
So new employees are kind of easier to mold for that type of thing than folks that have been here forever and have set ways of doing things. I brought up in the last interview the idea of customer service is paramount to people coming in and for the people on the front lines to give out. I'm going to use the same example. I'm sorry for being repetitive. But if you have a person, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith or whoever, come into town hall and they go to the assessor's office, and they really need to be in the accountant's office or the treasurer's office. Don't point your finger down the hall and say you need to go down here. You know, if it's safe and there's somebody else in the office, get up out of your chair, walk that person down to that office and say, this is Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones. They have a problem with this. Could you help them, please? We can't. Those little things make a big difference in perception of town hall. And it's, you know, one interaction with one person gives a perception for the whole municipality. So we want to make sure that people are respected, people are treated with dignity, and none of their questions are considered base, that they're all legitimate questions, and that we need to answer them.
Can I continue, Chair? Thank you. And what you will do with the old employee that think they know everything and it's wrong?
There are, sometimes one has to get firmer than what you'd like. And I think, you know, you try the talking to them, the written memo piece, you do kind of the progressive piece, and then you eventually bring them in and you have a come to meet the leader meeting and how things need to be. And we want to see some changes. You put a timeline in place, you put goals in place, you do check-ins so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle and we don't forget that we were doing this, and you make people accountable and you hold their feet to the fire until the change is done. If the change can't be made and customers are still being not treated appropriately, or the council's not being listened to, or the manager's not being listened to, then you have to start a progressive disciplinary approach to it. I've hired, I've fired, I've demoted, I've put on leave. I don't like doing that, but sometimes you don't have a choice.
One more question, please. If you become a town manager of Southbridge, you will to put a rate on each office for the citizen to check and give review on employee, how he was treated?
So annual personnel reviews, is that what you mean?
Every time some customers came or residents to do a business.
Okay, so like a survey of how they were treated.
Surveyor, that kind of surveyor, yes.
You absolutely could do that. You could do a hard copy one, you could do an electronic one. If people are getting electronic receipts, you can send that out with the receipt. But you want to be very careful on how those questions are posed. You want to make sure that they're fair questions. You know, were you treated with respect? Will you come back? What is your impression of the municipality? I'm not a pollster. There is a right way and a wrong way to do polling or surveying, and you want to be sure you're doing it correctly. But that's certainly something that could be done.
Thank you.
Councilor Senior.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you for applying for the job here.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to your answers tonight. You've answered one of my questions, so I'll go on with another one. Describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision that was unpopular but necessary for the town's best interest and not in the best interest of the employees nor the town council. How would you handle that?
I don't want to give the same example again. We had a situation in the leading up to the winter of either 15 or 16 when the MBTA wouldn't run. It couldn't run. It was breaking down all the time. We had gone to town meeting and petitioned town meeting to join the MBTA. It was about a $40,000 expenditure in addition to what we were paying the Regional Transit Authority. It was about as popular as nothing with a lot of folks and with some of the select board. We persevered. The town meeting adopted it, and the intent was that when the north-south connector was going down to Fall River in New Bedford, we could get it to stop in Middleborough and get a spur down to Bourne so we could have commuter rail. The rail had already been upgraded because of the Cape Flyer. That wasn't popular. I was soundly, lots of letters to the editor, lots of all those things that can happen. But we persevered, it passed. We ended up getting more regional transit authority services, so the money that was going to the MBTA went away. It wasn't any less money spent, but we were getting more service through regional transit and getting a fixed route. And today, with that rail going down, they're moving the Lakeville station to Middleborough, and that spur is going to occur. It's still a couple of years out, but it was long-term planning for economic development.
Follow up with that. Do you have a problem challenging town council when you feel that the council's actions are wrong or potentially illegal?
No. I'm sometimes more pointed when it's important. I will challenge respectfully the council if I think they're heading off in a wrong direction. If there's something that I don't think meets the smell test legally, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been around a while and know the statutes, but I certainly would check in with town council or the MMA to be sure that the council wasn't putting itself in a perilous position. My job is to be sure you don't get yourself into a perilous position.
Mr. Chairman, one more question was asked of the other candidate. Living in Vermont, how do you plan on handling your commute, coming to work every day, and are you able to handle the amount of meetings that take place at night with council, subcommittees, commissions, boards? How would you handle those situations?
I'm going to get a place locally. I want that clear. Be it a room or an apartment or what, I will be here. So that's not going to be an issue. And one of the good things you get with Garino when I'm down here, I don't have much of a life, outside of work, so I'm going to put in a lot of hours. As I said at the last interview, if I can find a local community band and the YMCA, I'll be quite happy. I do want to also point out there was a time when my children were younger that between scouting and ballet and taekwondo and youth theater, and I was commuting back and forth 3-4 times a week. I'd be getting home at 1, going just to see how they did in the morning, how'd it go last night, or I'd leave an hour early so I could get home to a function, but I never missed a day of work.
Thank you.
And nor will I here.
I didn't hear, did you say that you're going to move here?
I am not moving my family here for reasons that I kind of got into, and I'd be more than happy to in an executive session.
No, it's okay.
But I will have a presence here, and if it's a weekend game, I'll be here. If the fire department's doing something, I'm going to be here. If the Little League's got a tournament, I'm going to be here. It's important to become invested in the community you work in.
Councilor Shea, you all set?
Yep, thank you.
Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Good evening, Mr. Garino. Glad to see you again.
Nice to see you, sir.
Now, I've been looking at your background, Bachelor of Arts, magna cum laude, associate's degree in liberal arts, your experience, town administrator, Bourne, 15 years, housing authority, consultant with the wastewater contract. Very competent experience, but how does your background, your education, how does that relate to municipal administration?
My municipal administration, has been learned as opposed to pedigreed, I guess would be a word that I'd be looking at. When I came out of college, I had planned to run for state rep. That was the plan. Plans get thrown in the river sometime. So my work with a circuit rider started it. I've taken professional development courses, both through ICMA, MMA, and others. I have as good a financial acumen as anyone out there, I think, I hope. I think that the work we did in Bourne as a team, finance and other, shows that. I ran a very complicated community in Bourne. Not only was it a town of 7 or 8 villages, and one didn't care what the other one, and they cared, they were all part of the town. But Katomet was very different than Sagamore. And there were a lot of tough battles in Bourne. We had a $12 million landfill enterprise fund. I knew nothing about running a landfill nor bivalves. We had a very prolific natural resources department. We did a lot of shellfish. I'm from Western Mass. I don't know much about shellfish, but I do now. You know, and a lot of it's been by experience, a lot of it's been by training, and a lot of it's been by calling my peer in the next town saying, if you had this situation, what would you do?
All right, thank you. Now, you are involved in the Housing Authority, and I'm not sure you can answer this question, but I'll throw it to you anyway. Southbridge has a shortage of affordable housing here. Rents are very high. Occupancy is over 90% in the latest census. But some feel housing does not really benefit the town as far as tax revenue go. Plus it brings more low-income residents to town, and it's a drag on services. So can you explain why you think more housing is a benefit to the community? And I'm not sure if your experience on the Housing Authority, you're able to answer it, but I would try anyway.
So I think at all public housing agencies right now, there is a lack of units. There is an abundance of rent. And for people that are on subsidy, it's really hard to find an apartment because the rents are higher than what the subsidy is going to be, and the landlords don't want to take less. There's a yes and no to your answer relative to more families and the tax burden and so forth. Yes, someone paying $7,000 a year in property tax with 4 children is getting a pretty good bargain if they're in the public school system. But we want, I think, as a community to encourage people to come to town. People who come to town will shop in town. You know, people who stay in town will be vested in their community. Housing production is really hard. And when you're getting to the $300 to $350 per square foot to build affordable housing, it gets really hard to do. But I don't think bringing people in is a bad thing. It will create its own industry. It will create its own economic growth. The shops will do better. Hiring will be easier locally. There'll be a lot of things that can be done with an influx of folks. I'm not opposed to towns growing.
All right. I'll just ask you a couple of questions that I asked the other candidates. Do you listen and relate well with council members or selectmen?
Generally speaking, yes. There have been select board members that have been thorny over time, sure. I had one who came in and for 9 years was nipping at my heels, okay? But as it turns out, we've become very good friends. And I think I do well with council members or select board until such time as they ask me to do them a favor or to take care of something for them. Or you got to know that this employee over here is no good. You know, that's kind of encroaching into the charter area. But overall, I've had good, at one point I had a board of 27, and I dealt well with them. We had an executive committee, it made it a little easier. But I don't think that you're going to find a problem with my affability and ability to relate to the counselors, both professionally and personally. I'm not one who goes to counselors or select board members' houses for dinner. I don't think that's right. I've been invited, I just don't think it's right. So I try to stay away from that. And I generally don't go out and play golf with council members by themselves. It's not a good thing to do.
All right. And finally, are you an independent thinker, not easily swayed by staff or others in management positions?
Sure. That's the short answer. The long answer is there's different ways to make decisions. And sometimes you have to be the sole decision maker. Sometimes you want to get input and need to get input from your department leaders, and then make, the decision is still yours. And then there's a consensus model that we need to get something done. What's the best way to do it? Work with your department leaders, make sure they're a part of the process, and try to move forward with a decision that's made by the group that's not going to have an impact on the policy decisions that are set forth by the council.
All right, I'm set. Thank you.
Councilor Montague?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Welcome. And I'm going to ask you the same question, maybe from a different angle as I asked the last person. It's in regards to what do you see in your potential for Southbridge as your analysis looking at us for the last couple of months. But I'm going to repeat the question at the end. I kind of have been very public and open that I want someone that will be living here, and I appreciate you saying that you'll get a room or something of some kind. But, for me, I just want to plug Southbridge for a second. Rather than get a room, we had a one-town manager who came here and then moved to Holland. And it's like, well, why didn't you move to Southbridge? Because, Southbridge, it's a great location. You get Worcester, Boston, Hartford, Springfield. It's central. And then, but at the same time, I got to stand up for my town as opposed to moving to Sturbridge or Charlton, because more than half this council could probably say, I was born in Southbridge as my hometown, So again, going back to that, with the error on the side of relocating to Southbridge, what do you see in its potential?
Okay. I'm going to go back to the first interview I had a couple of years ago. When I drove into town, there was a lot of empty storefronts. But the bones of downtown, of your core downtown, are really good. Since then, I've been walking around town. There's new shops opened. You've done a lot of you've done a lot of construction work. I'm saying going down the hill. You mentioned a couple of points that are spot on. You want to market yourself as a community that is close to the Pike, close to New York City, close to Providence, close to Boston, good east-west transportation out to the New York State and the others. That's one of the things you want to do. A lot of things towns are doing right now are they're getting branding people, marketing people for. That's great if you can afford it. But there is enough between your Economic Development Commission, the council members themselves, when department heads start talking up the town really well, that permeates out. When people in town hall start talking up as opposed to down the town, that permeates out. You can have, some of the things I think we would want to do is do a facilitated, almost like a master planning session. You have your master plan, I had a long-term comprehensive plan. But let's get the citizens in here. And if we got to go out to neighborhoods to do that and have some listening sessions, I think that's a great idea. It gives you some ideas on what you may not have thought about. Maybe that's not your constituency that got you, that put you here, and you get different points of view, and it gives you a much better melt on where we should go. The marketing of Southbridge isn't hard. The work behind it, it costs money to make money, and you're spending money. You're spending, there's sewer lines and water lines. I've been riding around town. There's new patchwork all over the place. So you're doing the right things. And I think economic development, just to get to kind of the core of your question, takes a long time.
Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate you listening to that because it is important to me that, the person gets a place in Southbridge. But, a lot of people will throw around the idea that in years past, it's been certain councils or certain town managers that have been responsible for the downfall or the trajectory changing for Southbridge. But everybody forgets to mention over time what happened to us happened to like many mill towns before. We had the American Optical, and it had 7,000 employees. They all lived in town, and that went away. I know it's been a long time now, but as you said just a second ago, economic development is important and takes a while. But, I think a lot of people up here could say that they have family that worked there. I know my grandmother worked there. I don't know if she was, polishing the lenses or if she did the secretary, but everybody has somebody in their family that worked there. And we struggled to get back, especially because, not to go off topic too much, but the Department of Defense was supposed to rent out that building. And
I
they
remember, and there was going to be an
did.
IRS center here. There was all kinds of things going to happen. I remember when AO went out. You're not very different than my hometown of Greenfield. Greenfield was a tap and die town. It was a machine tooling town. Greenfield Tap and Die went out. Miller's Falls Tool Company went out. Threadwell went out. Town's population didn't change. And they've been, so it's not just here. It happened in Holyoke. It happened in Lawrence. But it happened in smaller towns too, not just the big industrial cities. Greenfield, Turner's Falls, the paper mills went out. Warren, as an example, Wright Brothers is out. I don't know if Hardwork Knitters is still in place. Big hits to the town with a lot of empty square footage to fill.
And just to finish up with that, I appreciate that you can relate, but do you have any sort of idea for how to fix a town like that, not just Southbridge, but a town that's been hit hard by the loss of, industry?
I'm not a savant on that type of thing, but I think the things that you need to do is, one, you got to go back and dust off a lot of those studies that were done that nothing was ever done with, okay? And I'm sure every town's got a few of those. Glean the important parts of that. Work with the Economic Development Commission, work with the Chamber of Commerce, work with the local merchants. The gentleman who owns the barber shop right up the street here, he's been going. He seems to be busy all the time. He's someone I want to talk to. What do you see? So there are ways to. That's how you do it, by looking at the past. Say, okay, put your marks down, and then plan a path forward. Get the state agencies involved, get the federal agencies involved, get the Department of Commerce involved, the EDA, talk to Mass Development, talk to private sector developers, and see what they see for potential here as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Welcome back.
Nice
Good to see you,
Mr. Adams.
Tom. Question. So just recently, an article came out today on Boston schools between the Commissioner of DESE, or Bessie, Commissioner Riley, and Mayor Wu, about them taking over the Boston school public school system. We obviously have 3 others that are in receivership, us being one of them. Recently, and I didn't bring this up with the other ones, but I just thought about it, but we recently had a non-binding vote where it was 87 to 90% voted in favor of us getting the schools back. That's great. Got it. But how do you, and recently the town council has really been pushing the state, not so much the receiver, but going towards the state, because that is the boss. They get the directions from that boss, or bosses. How do you deal with what the receiver needs to do? Right, educate our students and get the staffing issues taken care of and all that kind of stuff, move the MCAS scores forward and all that kind of stuff. Then you've got the state you're going to need to deal with, because they're the ones pulling the strings in a lot of ways. And then town council. How do you do that as a manager when you're pulled in 3 different directions?
Well, I think you're not pulled in 3 different directions. You're pulled in the direction of getting out of the receivership. That's the direction that you want to look at. And what are the steps that you need to do to accomplish that? I have a colleague or a friend at DESE that I've spoken to. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but on this. I've spoken with a former colleague who was part of the Springfield receivership for the city. She was working with the Mayor Sarno at the time. You have to go after it fact-based. You can't go after it emotionally based. Show me the statistics that the markers, since the receiver has been here, how much better are they doing? You know, where's the data to show me how good the receiver is doing in doing this? Work with your legislative delegation. Put a cogent case together as to why it's time. One of the questions that was asked in the last interview is how do we get the school committee, who's been under the thumb of the receiver, ready to govern the schools? And we talked a little bit about that at the last session. There are ways to do that. You know, I don't, in my head, think that they're going to be as behind the 8 ball as I think people might think, but you want to bring in the Mass Association of School Committees, the Mass Association of Superintendents. Talk to your school committees in neighboring towns on what's working best, what's not working best, how do we get this thing moving. The key is you need to be able to understand where the Commonwealth is coming from and what their outcomes are, and then challenge them that they either have or haven't met those outcomes, and how is that better than our own folks running the system?
Thank you. That's all I have.
Council Ortiz?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Daniels?
Very good, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Having served Southbridge with 3 different town managers on a close basis, I've discovered a common issue that either befuddled or vexed all of them. Further, during personal discussion, I heard all 3 managers exclaim that there is a lot going on in town. Would you describe your management style relative to handling numerous issues coming before you at one time, and what would your priorities be?
So always public safety, life safety issues come first, period. Now, we have other issues, okay? You have to triage them. You have to put them in a time, okay, you need to put a PERT chart out on what's going on, and that has to get updated almost weekly. Where you set your own benchmarks. There are things that are going to come up that are going to defer the progress on some things. Maybe a storm comes through like you had several years ago. That kind of puts everything on hold, and you have to take care of that. The idea is to have good time management, be willing to put the hours in, and to be able to triage appropriately. You're always going to be pulled in 15 different directions. That's the nature of the beast. The notion that a town manager on his or her way out would say, there's just too much going on in town, that doesn't ring for me. There's always 100,000 things going on in town, and you need to be able to triage, prioritize, and if you have to reshuffle, come back to the council and let them know that you got to reshuffle. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
That's good. Is there some area of your personal inventory of job performance that you feel you need to improve at this point?
Yes, there always is. I think that I can be seen as more affable, and people confuse affability with chumpiness, okay? And that's not the case. So I sometimes have to take down my sense of humor, or my alleged sense of humor, and, you know, get a little more serious. I'm always serious about the outcome. The conversation sometimes can be a little lighter than what people are expecting.
Very good. Can you give me a sense as to what a day in your life is in the town manager's office?
Sure. Call the police and fire chiefs first thing to be sure that if anything happened overnight that the council members or I need to be aware of, we're made aware of it. Also speak with DPW, you know, if there's a water break or something on that idea, I need to know. I generally read a lot of newspapers when I first get into the office, the local paper, the Globe, to see what perhaps is going on at the State House. I read the State House News, those types of things. I check any phone messages. I get back to any calls I wasn't able to make the day before for whatever reason. And then I plan out my day relative to how my appointment schedule is going to be and when I'm going to need work time. Because I always set aside a couple of hours just work time unless there's an emergency.
Okay, one last question, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. You've obviously done substantial due diligence. This is your second time here. It seems like you've got a pretty good sense as to the town and what we're about, that sort of thing. What are your personal impressions of what our needs are that you would be wanting to address?
Well, I think there's two things that come to mind. One is the issue with the school department. I think that that's a major issue, that it's on the front of the minds of everyone in town. And it's something we need to continue to address deliberately. I'm a little, even though you've done a great job, and I mean that sincerely, I'm a little still concerned relative to your free cash certification. It's under 5%, or it was in '23. And I'd like to see how we could get that up. Perhaps turnbacks go to free cash for a year and are not, you know, don't get brought back into the budget. Capital stabilization accounts, I think, are important. And I don't know how the union contracts are, but I think that's something else that I would want to certainly be sure are intact. And there's no hiccups coming down the road that I'm not aware of. I think that there is a sense in town that perhaps you've gone 13 rounds in a 12-round fight. And I think we need to kind of dispel that and stop, at least from what I've read, some self-deprecation about the community and really start cheerleading the community. And I think when we do that, we're able to change the trajectory. Again, things take time, but that's the three things. The union thing's a little separate, but those three things I think are what I would want to work on first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other questions by any of the councilors? Councilor Shinya?
Sir, just to follow up on what you said, and make sure that I understood you correctly. In town, we've had multiple resignations and concerns about employees, difficult employees, and those kind of things. And if I understood you, you mentioned that for you, council coming to you for favors, telling you what to do with employees and those kind of things, where that would be treading lightly on council for doing that. But under our charter, we're allowed to go to you and freely speak about appointments and disciplines or removals.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how would you handle a situation as such?
I may have been lost in translation. My point was, certainly come to me. Don't go to the employee.
Okay.
Certainly come to me. If you have an issue with an employee, you should bring it to me, and then we address it from there. My point is, don't go to an employee or a department leader and ask them to do something.
Okay. Because we still, even under the charter, we can't dictate to you about hiring somebody or firing somebody, demoting, or those kind of things, but we're freely able to discuss that issue with you.
Absolutely, and you have a veto power under the charter, both on termination and on hiring. That isn't unusual.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions by any of the councilors? If not, thank you very much.
I
If have
thank
a
you.
Closing statement, help yourself. Oh, anything else? No. Did you want
Oh,
to make-
closing statement? It would be a regurgitation of my opening statement.
Okay.
However, I do want to say that I've been able to spend almost 3 full days here, incognito. My walking, reading, doing the streets, looking at the facilities, looking at your drainage, looking at your catch basins, all the things that town managers have to look at that other people don't really want to deal with. You know, one of the things, I do want to ask a question. Why does DCR close that pool at 5 o'clock? Does anyone know? It's open 12 to 5.
Why does who?
Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Okay.
They built the pool,
Yeah.
and it's closed at 5 o'clock.
Talking about the Petro pool?
The built-in pool.
Are you talking about the Petro pool?
Yes, sir.
That's run by the YMCA.
It's owned by the Y. Okay, it had DCR on it, so I thought
They're
DCR
running
ran it.
They're running it, they're managing it.
Yeah, they manage.
They manage it for them? Okay. It just seems on a really, really hot summer week that they'd have extended hours.
I agree, I wanted to go myself.
Yeah, that kind of bothered me today. But I guess I've done a lot in town to get ready to be the manager in this town.
Thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate it.
To cool off, you're gonna need more than the town pool.
All right, councilors, what is the feeling?
5 minutes.
Let's take a 5-minute recess. I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Town Manager Search Committee. We are at the time of the vote. What we're going to do is we're going to start from right to left. I would like you to call out the name of the candidate that you would like to see as your next town manager. Councilor Daniels?
I think that we have 3 very qualified candidates here this evening. It was nice to see Mr. Guarino back. He did very well the first time around, so I felt kind of familiar with him this time, and I'm still very impressed with him and how he was carrying himself, what he had in mind for the town of Southbridge. However, I think that Councilor Jovan is the person, former Councilor Jovan is the person that we need for the position this time around. I think circumstances in town are such that we need someone that knows the town, knows the politics in town, understands the citizens of town on a personal level, and really knows the town. Just plain knows the town. So I would be inclined to vote for former Councilor Jovan first and Mr. Guarino second.
For the record, Daniels has voted for Jovan. Harry Ortiz?
Jovan.
Harry Ortiz voted for Jovan. Councilor Adams.
Jovan.
Let it be known that Adams votes for Jovan. Councilor Montigny.
Jovan.
Let it be known that Montigny voted for Jovan. Councilor Marquetti.
Guarino.
Let the record show that Marquetti voted for Guarino. Councilor Shinya.
Jovan.
Let the record show that Councilor Shinya voted for Jovan. Councilor Dow.
The 3 candidates did very good. But me personally, I like local. Like I say, live in town, feel out of pain. Pay the tax we pay, drive on the road we drive. shop from the grocery store, we shop, send your kids to the school, and he grew up in town and he live in town, and I hope will be the future Southbridge under his hand and this council right here. I think I'm going to vote for Jovan tonight.
Let the record show, Councilor Dow voted for Jovan. Councilor Rivas.
Guarino.
Guarino?
Guarino, yes.
Let the record show, Councilor Rivas voted for Guarino. I'm just going to take a minute before I cast my vote. I think everybody knows, after listening to the candidates, there were 3 fine candidates. But I'm a person that, since I've been on council, it's a Southbridge First agenda. Now that I have attained the chair of Southbridge Town Council, the one thing that I understand is if you're going to bleed red, as I always say, white, team colors, we must think about Southbridge first. I've sat here for various town council meetings with town managers. I'm going to move to town. I'm going to be here for a long time. And we've been lied to by certain managers that they were going to move to town. They didn't. They were told us stories to get the job, built a resume, and moved on. The one thing that I know, the gentleman that I'm going to vote for has the experience, more experience when it comes to the job that he has to do, whether it be building committees, fire departments, police departments, or even just being a father and a family man. This guy has done the job. I think going forward, knowing that he lives in Southbridge, that he's going to drive these roads, that he's going to use the services in town. I have disagreed with Jack Jovan and had some loud arguments, and he is a great orator, but he never took it personally. It was always about the issue. It was always about the town. The town always came first, and that's what we have to continue to do. I think this town council is poised and ready for a Jack Jovan. I cast my vote. Let the record show. Scott Lazo voted for Jack Jovan. Total vote at this time, 2 for Guarino, 7 for Jack Jovan. At this time, Jack Jovan is the town manager-elect, so to speak. We will be recognizing Councilor Adams at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Make a motion to vote to enter in negotiations with Mr. John D. Jovan, Jr.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Adams, motion to go into negotiations with Jack Jovan. Seconded by Shinya. Discussion. Entering into negotiations will be an executive session of the full council during a regular council meeting. So we will all be in that room dealing with our candidate-elect, so to speak. Any further discussion? If not, roll call. Daniels?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Montigny?
Yes.
Marquetti?
Yes.
Shinya?
Yes.
Dow?
Yes.
Rivas?
Yes.
Let the record show the unanimous vote to go into executive session in the future to negotiate with Jack Jovan. Thank you very much.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous vote, President.